Welcome back to Fluent Harbor. Today, we have a very special story for you. It is a love story, a story about two people who found each other in the most unexpected place. So sit back, relax, and let the words wash over you. This story is called A Garden Full of Promises. Once upon a time, in a quiet and colorful city called Maplewood, there lived a young woman named Clara. Clara was soft-spoken, kind-hearted, and incredibly talented. She worked as an interior decorator. She had a gift for turning empty spaces into beautiful, warm homes. People in Maplewood knew her name. They trusted her eyes. They trusted her heart. But Clara was also a little shy. She kept her feelings close. She smiled a lot on the outside, but sometimes felt lonely on the inside. One afternoon, a letter arrived at her door. It was a wedding invitation. Her cousin, Diana, was getting married. Clara's heart lit up. Diana was not just a cousin, she was more like a sister. They had grown up together. They had laughed together. They had cried together. And now, Diana was getting married. Clara felt so happy for her. The wedding was going to be held at a beautiful old estate, a place called Rosewood Manor. It sat in the middle of rolling green hills just outside the city. Clara had not been there since she was a little girl. She could still remember the tall oak trees, the stone walls, and the smell of fresh flowers in the air. Clara packed her bags with excitement, but she also felt a little nervous. She had not seen some of her family in years. She wondered, would they remember her? Would they still feel the same? She took a deep breath, smiled at herself in the mirror, and whispered, "You can do this, Clara." The drive to Rosewood Manor took about 2 hours. Clara watched the city slowly disappear and the countryside come to life. There were green fields on every side. Small white cottages sat along the road. Birds flew above the golden hills. It was peaceful. It was beautiful. It reminded Clara why she loved quiet places. When she finally arrived at Rosewood Manor, she stopped the car and just stared. The estate was magnificent. The old stone building stood tall and proud. Ivy climbed along its walls. Gardens stretched out like a painting, with roses, lavender, and tall hedges shaped just right. Clara felt like she had stepped into a dream. Diana came running out the front door. Her arms were wide open. "Clara, you came! You actually came!" They hugged tightly. For a moment, the world stopped. Just two cousins, two old friends, two people who loved each other very much. Diana looked radiant. Her eyes were shining. Her smile was wide. Her whole face glowed. Clara held her face in her hands and said, "You are the most beautiful bride I have ever seen." Diana laughed and cried at the same time. That evening, Diana introduced Clara to her fiancé. His name was James. James was a calm and gentle man. He had warm eyes and a slow, steady smile. You could tell, just by watching him, that he truly loved Diana. Clara liked him immediately. She smiled and thought to herself, "Diana chose well." As the evening went on, more guests arrived at the estate. There was laughter everywhere. There were glasses clinking. There were old friends hugging in the garden. Children running through the hallways. Music playing softly in the background. The whole place felt alive. Clara found a quiet spot near the window. She was watching everyone dance and talk. She was happy, but also quiet inside. She sipped her drink slowly. And then she heard a voice. "Is this seat taken?" She looked up. Standing beside her was a man. Tall, dark eyes, a calm, easy smile. He had a relaxed way about him, like someone who was comfortable anywhere. Clara blinked. "No," she said. "Please, sit." His name was Ryan. Ryan was James's closest friend. They had grown up together in the same neighborhood. Ryan had just flown in from another city. He was a travel writer. He spent his days exploring new places, meeting new people, and writing about the beauty he found in the world. Clara thought that sounded wonderful. "That must be the most interesting job," she said. Ryan smiled. "It has its moments. But honestly, some of the most interesting things I've ever seen I found right in my own neighborhood." Clara paused. She looked at him. Something in those words felt different. They talked for a long time that night. Ryan asked about her work. Clara told him about the homes she had designed. She talked about color, about space, about how a room could make you feel things without you even noticing. Ryan leaned forward. He was genuinely interested. He asked questions. He listened carefully. He laughed at all the right moments. Clara couldn't remember the last time someone had listened to her like that. At one point, the music changed. A slow, gentle song drifted through the room. Ryan stood up and held out his hand. "Would you like to dance?" Clara looked at his hand for a second. Then she smiled. "I would love to." They danced slowly. The room felt warm. The lights were low. Everything around them seemed to fade a little. It was just the music and the two of them, and a feeling that was hard to name but impossible to ignore. Over the next 2 days, before the wedding, Ryan and Clara were almost always together. They walked through the gardens in the morning. They sat by the old stone fountain and talked about everything. Books they loved, places they had visited, dreams they had not told anyone else yet. Ryan told her about a small village in Portugal where the streets were painted blue and white, and the people made soup that tasted like sunshine. Clara laughed so hard she almost spilled her tea. Ryan looked at her when she laughed. He thought, "I could listen to that laugh forever." One evening, they sat by the edge of a small pond near the garden. The sun was setting slowly behind the hills. The sky turned pink and gold. The water was perfectly still. Ryan looked over at Clara and said, "I know this is fast. I know we just met, but I feel something with you that I have never felt before. Like, I don't want this week to end." Clara was quiet for a moment. She looked at the water, then she looked at him. "Neither do I," she said softly. The morning of the wedding arrived. Rosewood Manor was transformed. White flowers were everywhere. Silk ribbons hung from the branches of the old oak trees. Round tables were covered in soft cream cloth. Candles waited to be lit. It looked like something out of a fairy tale. Clara stood in the doorway of Diana's room. Diana was sitting in front of the mirror. Her wedding dress was simple and elegant. Her hair was pinned up with small pearl clips. She looked stunning. Clara felt her eyes fill with tears. She walked over quietly and placed a hand on Diana's shoulder. Diana looked up in the mirror at Clara, and without saying anything, they both started to cry. The good kind of tears. The kind that come when your heart is too full. The ceremony was held in the garden. Guests sat in neat rows of white chairs. The aisle was lined with soft green leaves and white roses, and when Diana appeared at the top of the stone steps, the whole garden seemed to hold its breath. James stood at the front. He saw her, and his face changed completely. His eyes filled with tears. His lip trembled just a little. He didn't look away, not even for a second. Clara watched the whole thing from her seat, and somewhere in her chest she felt something shift. She glanced to her left. Ryan was sitting just a few chairs away. He caught her eye. He smiled. She smiled back. And that was it. No words, no explanation needed. After the wedding, the real world came back. Clara returned to Maplewood. Ryan returned to his city. But they did not let go. They called each other every day, sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for 2 hours. They sent each other photographs. Ryan would take pictures of streets he was writing about and send them to Clara with little notes. "You would love this ceiling. The light here reminds me of you. Found a cafe you would never want to leave." Clara kept every one of those messages. They visited each other as often as they could. One weekend, Clara traveled to Ryan's city. He took her to his favorite bookshop. They spent 3 hours just walking slowly through the aisles, picking up books, reading the first sentence out loud, putting them back or adding them to the pile. Clara had never felt so comfortable with another person in complete silence. Another weekend, Ryan drove to Maplewood. Clara showed him the houses she had worked on. She did not just show him the rooms, she told him the stories. This family had just moved from across the country. They were scared and exhausted, so I painted this wall yellow. Yellow means beginning. Yellow means hope. Ryan stood in the middle of that yellow room. He looked around slowly, and then he looked at Clara. "You don't just design homes," he said quietly. "You heal people." Clara had never thought of it that way. She did not know what to say, so she just reached over and held his hand. 8 months after the wedding, Ryan called Clara one evening. He sounded different. Excited, a little nervous. "Clara, I have something to tell you. There's an opening at a magazine based in Maplewood. They want someone to cover local culture, local stories, the kind I have always wanted to write. I applied, and I got it." Clara put her hand over her mouth. "Ryan," she whispered, "are you saying—" "I am moving to Maplewood," he said, "if you will have me." She started to cry, the good kind again. Ryan moved to Maplewood in the spring. They found a small apartment together near the park. It had tall windows, wooden floors, and a little balcony just big enough for 2 chairs. Clara decorated every corner with care. Each piece of furniture had a story. Each color was chosen with feeling. Ryan said it was the most beautiful place he had ever lived, and he had lived in many places. Life settled into something wonderful. They cooked dinner together on weeknights. Ryan wrote at the kitchen table in the mornings. Clara sketched her designs at her desk in the evenings. On weekends, they explored the city together. They found new coffee shops, new walking paths through the park, new little restaurants tucked into quiet streets. And every Sunday evening, they sat on that small balcony together. 2 chairs, 2 cups of tea, and the sound of the city going quiet around them. A year after they met at the wedding, Ryan took Clara back to Rosewood Manor. Diana and James were happy to host them for the weekend. The 4 of them walked through the same garden where Clara and Ryan had first met. The oak trees were still there. The stone fountain still trickled softly. The roses were blooming. They walked slowly, and when they reached the edge of the pond, the same pond where they had watched the sunset that first time, Ryan stopped. He turned to face Clara. He reached into his pocket, and he got down on one knee. Clara's breath caught in her throat. "Clara," he said, "I have traveled to many beautiful places. I have written about sunsets and mountains and old streets full of stories. But the most beautiful thing I have ever found was you, right here, in this garden. Will you marry me?" Clara looked at him. Her eyes were full. Her heart was so full it almost hurt. She laughed and cried at the same time, just like Diana had that first night. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Ryan, 1,000 times yes." They were married 6 months later. Not at a grand estate, not with hundreds of guests, just a small ceremony. Family, close friends, the people who mattered most. Clara wore a soft white dress with tiny flowers sewn into the hem. Ryan wore a simple dark suit with a small rose pinned to his chest. Diana was Clara's maid of honor. James stood beside Ryan. When they exchanged their vows, Clara looked at Ryan and said, "I never believed in love at first sight. I believed in love at first conversation, at first honesty, at first being truly seen by someone. That is what you gave me, and I will spend the rest of my life giving it back to you." Ryan looked at her and said, "I have written thousands of words in my life, but I have never found the right words to describe what it feels like to love you. So I will just say this. Every day with you is my favorite thing I have ever written." The years that followed were full and rich. Clara's design work grew. She opened a small studio of her own. She took on projects that others said were too difficult. She always found a way. Ryan's writing earned him a wider audience. He wrote about families, about communities, about the small moments that make a life meaningful. People read his words and felt seen. And then, one quiet morning in winter, Clara found out she was pregnant. She walked into the kitchen where Ryan was reading. She placed a small white card on the table in front of him. He looked at it. He looked up at her. His eyes filled with tears. He stood up slowly and held her. Just held her. For a long time. Their daughter was born in the spring. They named her Lily, after flowers, after new beginnings, after the garden where everything had started. Lily had Ryan's calm eyes and Clara's wide, warm smile. She was the most beautiful thing either of them had ever seen. 3 years later, a little boy arrived. They named him Finn. Finn was curious and loud and full of laughter. He climbed everything. He asked 1,000 questions a day. He made the whole house feel like music. The family of 4 settled into their life in Maplewood. They lived in a house near the park now. A real house, with a big kitchen and a garden out back. Clara planted roses in the garden. Ryan built a small wooden bench beneath the oak tree. The children played on the grass while their parents sat on that bench together, drinking tea, watching them, saying nothing, because nothing needed to be said. Every summer, they visited Diana and James. The children called them Aunt Diana and Uncle James. They ran through the same halls Clara had run through as a girl. They played near the same stone fountain. They picked flowers from the same garden where their parents had first met. One evening, while sitting on the bench in the garden, Lily looked up at Clara and asked, "Mama, how did you and Ryan meet?" Clara smiled. She looked at Ryan. Ryan smiled back. "At a wedding," Clara said. "Your Aunt Diana's wedding. It was a beautiful summer evening. The garden was full of flowers, and Ryan walked over to me and asked if the seat next to me was taken." Lily thought about this for a moment. "And was it?" "No," Clara said. "No. It was waiting for him." Years passed. The children grew. Lily became a teenager who loved reading and drawing. Finn became a young boy who loved being outdoors and asking questions that no one could answer. Clara and Ryan grew with them. They changed too, not away from each other, but into something deeper, something quieter and stronger, like a tree that has weathered many seasons. Some years were hard. There was one winter when money was tight. Ryan's magazine went through difficult changes. Some writers were let go. For a few months, things felt uncertain. Ryan did not sleep well. He sat at his desk at night, staring at the blank page. Clara would come and sit beside him. She did not try to fix it. She did not give big advice. She just sat with him. She made tea. She put on quiet music. She said, "We will figure it out, together." And they did. Ryan found new work, slowly at first, then steadily. But Clara's words stayed with him long after. Together. That one word. It meant everything. Clara's mother fell ill one winter. It was a dark and frightening time. Ryan never left Clara's side. He made her tea when she could not sleep. He held her hand at the hospital. He kept the children calm and gentle while Clara fell apart a little and then put herself back together. Her mother recovered slowly, and Clara looked at Ryan one evening and said, "I do not know how to thank you." Ryan shook his head. "You do not need to thank me," he said. "This is what it means to love someone." They were not a perfect family. No family is. There were arguments. There were misunderstandings. There were nights when things felt heavy. But they always came back to each other. Always talked it through. Always found their way back. Because that was what they had promised. Not just on their wedding day, but every morning after. 15 years after they first met in that garden, Ryan and Clara returned to Rosewood Manor. Just the two of them. It was their anniversary. Diana and James gave them the whole estate for a weekend. They walked through the same paths, past the same fountain, past the same roses, and they came again to the edge of the same small pond. The sky was turning pink and gold, just like it had that first evening. Clara stood beside Ryan. Their hands found each other without looking. "Do you remember what you said to me here?" Clara asked. Ryan smiled. "I said I did not want the week to end," he said. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. "It has not," she said. Ryan kissed the top of her head. "No," he said softly. "It has not." And so that is the story of Clara and Ryan, a story about love that began in a garden, a love that was patient and honest and brave enough to grow. It is a story that reminds us that sometimes the most important moments in our lives begin very simply, with a voice asking, "Is this seat taken?" Thank you so much for listening today on Fluent Harbor. We hope this story brought you joy. We hope it helped you feel the words, because that is what language does. It lets us share what is in our hearts. Keep listening, keep learning, keep growing. Words are like seeds. Every new word you learn, every sentence you understand, is a seed planted in your mind. And one day, without even noticing, those seeds grow into something beautiful, into confidence, into connection, into the ability to share your own story with the world. We will see you next time. Until then, take care of yourselves. And remember, every great story starts with a simple hello.